There you go. Hi. I can't hear you, babe. Doop, 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 doop. Hi, can you turn on data or something? Because I think you're breaking up.
We knew this would happen.
Okay, I can like kind of see you now, but you're still like kind of blurry.
Wow.
And you're like super frozen. Like a lot. Are you on data?
I am.
You keep freezing though. Hi, Alexia.
This is so annoying.
Yeah.
Is this better?
I mean, kind of. Like, you're kind of laggy.
Wow.
Can
Okay.
you say something?
Yes. Give me
Okay, no.
like.
No, actually, that was. You look fine now.
This is good?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. You sure? I can move.
Yeah, I mean, you're clear, and I can hear you now, and you're not freezing as much. So I guess just.
Okay.
Ugh, my alarm's going off. Hi, Liv. I'm just gonna pause this real quick so I can turn my alarm off. Hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes. I said yes.
Cool. Okay. This is gonna be so fun. We're gonna give everyone an inside look into our relationship. You keep freezing, like really bad. Okay. How do I look? How are we doing? I can sing a song for you, just for you, Liv. I feel like I should entertain in some way because it's just gonna get posted like this until he comes back. Doop 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 doop. Hi, Tyler. Waiting.
Okay. Is this better?
We should have tested this before.
You said you were on top of it. I was preparing, and you're like, it's gonna be fine. So I'm blaming
Yeah,
you.
because I mean, I guess I should have realized that we always have issues when we FaceTime anyway. So
Yeah, it's my fault. My fault.
should have thought about that.
But you can hear me now.
Tyler's
I'm good.
here. And somebody I don't know. Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, Tim's here.
I'm just. Who's Tim?
Wow, cold-blooded.
Hi, Tim.
Tim's my boy.
Who's Jay Brio?
Oh my God, the whole band is here.
Who is it? Who is it?
That's Libby Quinn, baby. It's Josh.
Oh.
Never mind.
I don't know. These people don't follow me. They follow you. Sean Runkle. Oh my God. Hi, Libby Quinn. The whole band. I didn't listen to your new single yet, but I'll get on it.
We're breaking up. That's a fireable offense.
I just saw it on Tyler's Instagram today. You can't hurt me.
Fine.
All right. We'll give this a couple more minutes. Pray for us in the comments that this isn't just us fighting the whole time.
Probably will be.
We only prepped lightly, so.
For what?
For this. I'm talking to the
yeah.
followers, remember?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think let's just dive in because we only have an hour and it'll cut us off. And also, we got 5 people watching and that works for me. And it'll get posted later. So, cool. Hi, everybody. I feel like everyone watching this currently knows me. But I'm Maddie Bento. And I go to Hofstra, and I'm a senior, and I introduce myself every time, which is kind of weird. But today, I have with me my boyfriend, my partner, Andrew. And do you want to introduce yourself a little, Andrew, to Libby Quinn?
Not really, but they kind of know me.
Yeah, but for the after followers.
Fine, yeah. Hey, I'm Andrew. I'm 22 years old. I live in Georgia, in Peachtree City. I graduated from Hofstra in December. Me and Maddie have been together for like 2.5 years now or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what else you want me to say. I don't have any fun facts or anything like that.
Yeah, no, that's good. I know you wanted to come on to chat with me about everything going on because we've been chatting a lot like as a couple, but I think as well as I know you think that it's important for us to talk about Black Lives Matter in front of other people because we have an interracial relationship, which is something that we never really think about other than recently.
I mean, I hadn't noticed, but if that's what you say.
Yeah,
sure.
I hadn't noticed, but apparently we're in an interracial relationship. So yeah, let's just dive in. First of all, I'm going to say happy Juneteenth to everyone who's celebrating today. And I know you got off today, which is so awesome. Your company that you work for gave you off, which I think is really important.
Yeah,
but let's
you didn't
talk
send
a
me.
little bit of
You didn't send me money, by the way, which you were supposed to do.
reparations.
So, I'm for 'em.
Should I send you? I'll send you $2 later. Okay, $5.
You have my Venmo. I mean, in terms of like, it shouldn't really be coming from you to like make up for the hundreds of years of economic exploitation, but $5 is cool.
Okay, cool. I'll send you that later.
Like it's kind of your fault too. So, anyways,
let's talk about Juneteenth in general. I'm pretty sure everyone who would watch this already knows what it is, but it is today, the 19th of June, and from my understanding, the Emancipation Proclamation was signed in 1863, but the slaves weren't actually freed until 1865 on June 19th because the news didn't get to them in the South or in Texas. I just watched a video about like the actual history of it, and so it sounds like it's the slaves that were brought to Texas to be kept away from the Union and all this historical stuff, but pretty much the slaves were fully freed in 1965.
Yeah,
is what I'm understanding.
That's what I'm saying. Like, they got the news in 1863. They knew what was going on. They knew that Lincoln had issued the Emancipation Proclamation and everything, but there was no like army to come in and enforce it. So a lot of slave owners literally just during the Civil War like shipped slaves to Texas because they knew that they could continue to keep them there safely.
Yeah.
And
keep
safely
them
in quotation marks. Yeah. And keep them in bondage and stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah. So then, it's cool. I mean, for me, it kind of always was like I knew it kind of always was like a Texas thing. Like a Texas kind of a Black Texas holiday, which I thought was really cool. But
I mean, I know your grandpa's in Texas. Like, do you know if do they celebrate it actively in Texas?
Yeah, my grandpa doesn't really celebrate much of anything. But, my mom's family is all from Texas and everything, and definitely a lot of her relatives celebrate it, and it's cool that it's becoming like more nationalized because it is, it's something that we should celebrate and also like think more critically about like, you know, maybe why it took so long in the first place, and you know, the legacy of it and everything. So it's cool.
Yeah.
I'm glad
And that's just
I have off.
Yeah, and I would say that's just education, right? Because that comes down to, like, I knew Juneteenth existed before this year, but my mom didn't. I just talked to her about that yesterday, and, like, a bunch of people I talked to just didn't know it was a thing, didn't know it was a day that has been celebrated by the Black community. So, like, personally, I just think it just comes down to education. Like, I think if we're not educated about the accurate history of the United States, and I know, like, in America we have a huge problem talking about slavery in those times, like, then we aren't going to know about it, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I'm cool with it like being a national holiday for sure. I just don't want it to be turned into like a we gave you your national holiday, so like go away now type thing.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want them to be like, well, now you have Black History Month and you have Juneteenth, so you know, we don't have to pay you fair wages or like, you know, abolish the police or whatever. So
I mean, yeah, like,
I don't want it to distract
let's
from
talk
the
about
actual.
it then, because I know we talked about this a little bit last night, but I feel like for me the message is kind of like all over the place right now, because from my perspective as a white person and a white ally, like, it was like, okay, the protest started because George Floyd was murdered horrendously, and all of us saw it, and we wanted justice for him, and the message was justice for George Floyd. And then after he got justice, I mean, not yet because they haven't been indicted, but
it's transitioned, yeah.
Right. After the protests got what they wanted, now I feel like the message is kind of blurry. The message is kind of like, defund the police, but defund,
yeah,
like, do we all want to defund the police? Like, I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. Like, the message to me has always been pretty clear. You know, the Constitution originally was like set out to, you know, all people should be treated equally and stuff like that. And whether or not you believe that was actually ever their intention or not, you know, I think that's something to strive for. And I think that's all the protests have been, as a whole. In terms of like what systems need to be in place to ensure that, like, what changes need to be made or reforms or whatever, you know, people can mince words about like, or debate whether or not abolish or reform or whatever, or defund police, whatever. That's all just kind of technicalities that can be worked out. But I think the message overall has been, whether it's like, you know, now the protests have transitioned to include like, you know, Black trans lives matter, and kind of have merged into Pride Month and Black Pride. You know, that everyone, regardless of like their immutable characteristics and yeah, regardless of those characteristics, like, should be treated equally and fairly. So, you know,
I don't mean to put you on. Sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead. I'm just saying, like, the message is.
But I'm wondering, like, do you think that with the shift in the protests and the shift in the message, it's going to push people away from the movement? Because, I mean, I'll be honest, like, I feel like that's something I've experienced is like, oh, Echo's barking, but something I've experienced is like, I felt kind of disconnected from the movement lately, because I feel like I am not connecting to it in the same way that I was before, which is definitely a privilege I have as a white person.
Sure.
But do you feel like it's going to push people away the farther it gets from the original message, I guess?
No, I mean, I don't think so. I think I think the protests, like, right now in Atlanta, are still very much focused on, you know, police brutality and police violence. Ever since like Rayshard Brooks was murdered at a Wendy's. So, but even with the protests that are becoming increasingly intersectional, to include like trans lives and the LGBTQ community, and Black members of those communities, you know, I don't think it's really pushing people away, because I think if you
Hang on, you froze
you
out
know,
a little bit.
am I there? Am I back?
Okay. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think
Yep.
ultimately, like, sure, maybe it's on a human level a little more difficult to connect with, you know, with something that you're not. You know, it's easier for me to connect with, you know, straight men than it is with gay men because we have different experiences, and maybe that affects it, but I don't think so, because I think at the end of the day, like, if you're standing up for human rights and, you know, the belief that every person should be treated fairly and equally and not be killed by the police or, you know, a white supremacist society, then, you know, whatever the protest is called, like, you know, you're still going to be there and you're still going to believe in that message. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I hear you. What's been, I mean, I know what your experience has been like and what your opinions are and what your journey's been like the past few weeks, but I guess you could just say to everyone else, like, what maybe you've been thinking, feeling about all of it in, like, a quick summary, maybe.
Quick sum, man, you know, it's really consumed my life. Am I there? Can you hear me?
Yes, now you are.
Sorry.
Okay.
Got this Comcast Wi-Fi. Yeah, I mean, you know, like, it's consumed my life and my thoughts and everything. You know, being biracial, being Black, in Georgia, and having parents who are interracial. My dad is Jewish, and having my dad currently still be in law enforcement, and having worked in law enforcement since like the early 90s, who he himself was involved in a police violence like in 2009. Yeah, I mean, this is an impossibly deep and connected issue for me personally. Um, you know, I think it's been kind of tough to not feel overwhelmed by like the enormity of the problem and how like interconnected it all is. You know, because at the end of the day, like, it's so related to, you know, capitalism and the Constitution and like these basic things that, you know, unless we completely topple and overthrow, which I'm in favor of, but might be difficult to do in the next few years or so. Yeah, it's just kind of overwhelming to think that like anything's gonna, you know, really get solved by, you know, a few pieces of legislation or something like that. So.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll ask you, like, how do you feel about defunding the police or that whole message because your dad is a cop or is in law enforcement, you know?
Yeah, I mean, he's in favor of it too. So, like, you know, it's like, so my dad, you know, he's Jewish. My mom is Black, so he's very actively anti-racist and has been for his whole life. So it's put him. He's been in some unique situations, like being in law enforcement and everything. But when he was in 2008, you know, he and his partner were called. This guy's mom called because they were being held hostage by her son, who was off his medication. And, you know, long story short, he was aggressive and psychotic. He actually choked my dad's partner unconscious, and my dad didn't have tasers at the time because it was 2008, and I guess they didn't have them in East Point or wherever. And yeah, my dad tried non-lethally, and after you choke the partner unconscious and grab the partner's gun, I mean, my dad had to do what he had to do, and like that's such a tough thing to kind of think about personally because I know my dad did everything that he could to solve that situation, be the best that a cop can be. I think is what he did, and still whether or not you'd say it's a justified killing or whatever, cleared of every investigation pretty easily. His name was never even released publicly because it was so kind of understood. But at the end of the day, he was only as good as a cop could be in that situation. So I think that's kind of why we're both like, maybe if there was some other way that she didn't have to call the police because she was, worried about her son who hadn't been taking his meds, if she could call, a crisis counselor, if she could call, if there was like a community, model, something different where, guys don't show up with handcuffs, but, and, my dad is a nice guy, but, he's a cop and, he's not a trained psychiatrist or crisis counselor or anything like that. So, I think we're both in favor of that and in favor of that kind of change. Because I think is like as good as a
Mhm.
yeah of abolishing the police and like transitioning to different models that like don't overly criminalize and incarcerate like black and brown people and try to take care of them because like as good as a cop as you can be, and I'm not saying my dad is like the best cop of all time or anything like that, but there's still going to be some situations where like police officers and like police training just isn't gonna give you an outcome that you want and that I want in society. So
Do you feel like the other kind of message about like increasing training would be a solution, or is it just like no police? Because I think for me, like, maybe it's because I'm a white person and maybe it's because I'm a white girl, but like the sound of getting rid of police to me is like scary. And I think that's
for
because
sure.
I feel protected by police because I am white. But I can't see a world like without them at all.
Yeah, I get what you're saying for sure. I mean, I think that's just not been traditionally like my relationship with the police has been like they're here to help you, or because if you actually think about like the work that police do, a lot of the conversation has been in like, if you get rid of the cops, like who's going to stop rapes or who's going to stop murders or anything like that. But it's even the best cops in the United States with like the best training or whatever aren't out there like, and if someone's about to be assaulted, they're like, stop, and stop it in progress or anything like that. It's a lot of, after the crime happens. So I get what you're saying about like wanting there. And I think there is always going to need to be some kind of armed government service, for some reason, because there are going to be some cases where, people are violent and, talking to them probably won't do it in order to protect other people. But yeah, I'm in favor of transitioning away from it entirely because I don't think it works for us. So, or for me.
I want to talk. Oh, are you there?
I'm there, yeah.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about our relationship, just
Okay.
for the people and for us. Because I remember, just to be completely transparent with everybody, the first day that the protest started happening, I cried for like 2 hours because I just fully broke down thinking that it could have been you. And I think that's when I really realized for the first time that I'm dating a black man. And I didn't.
That's
Is that like bad to say? I feel like that's probably
no,
bad.
no, no. It's no. I know what you mean. It's. I mean, you obviously knew. It was just kind of funny how you said it. Like I didn't hide
I
it
just,
from
you
you.
know what I mean. But
Yeah.
I think
You're
like
not blind. Yeah.
obviously I'm not colorblind, but we have an experience as a couple. Thanks, Tyrone. We have an experience as a couple, like a lot of hardships with the police or with racism or anything against our interracial relationship. So I don't think I ever like confronted that, but I think after that happened, I realized it could have been you. And I think that was really hard for me. And I just want you to know, like, obviously, like, I love you and I support you. And I like, I think that's really what prompted me to be so active. I don't want to say this time around, but this time around,
Yeah.
because last time Black Lives Matter movement was happening, I wasn't dating you, and I didn't know you, and I have never dated a man of color before, and I think it's really changed a lot for me. I know this is kind of ranty, but I think
That's
it's
okay.
like changed my perspective
Yeah.
about a lot of things.
Yeah. For sure.
And I just want to know like what you experienced maybe when that first was going on.
Yeah. So what I experienced when the protests were first going on.
Yeah, like
Yeah. Or just. Yeah. I mean, for me, I've just kind of been coming to terms with like my own, my own privilege scale. Kind of realizing, and I've always known that there's going to be situations where, like, I'm, either identified as Hispanic or Middle Eastern or something else, or there's gonna be situations where I'm identified as black, and situations where I'm not, because I'm biracial and pretty light skinned, for
yeah.
sure. And then as well, there's just I live in an affluent town where I was able to vote pretty easily on the 19th or whenever it was, not the 19th, but I was able to vote pretty easily. Whereas like, a lot of other communities of color, like in Georgia, were waiting in line like 6 hours plus. It took me like 5 minutes. Um, but at the same time, like there's, my brother's been discriminated against in the schools, openly for his race, and it's just kind of coming to terms with like there's going to be times where my privilege kind of works for me, and I honestly don't know if how police officers would identify me, or if they'd see me as a threat the way they saw George Floyd as a threat or whatever, or Rayshard Brooks or Sandra Bland or Trayvon Martin or anything like that. But yeah, it's still kind of understanding that there's going to be situations where like with my brother, like it didn't matter, all of those things, that like they still saw him as black, and they still kicked him right out of school because of it. Yeah, just kind of interrogating that and trying to understand that has been probably the biggest thing for me. And then, yeah, I mean, I'd say, I thanks if I inspired you to become more active and things like that. I don't think I did at all. I think it was all you, for sure. You've always cared a lot about other people, and while you're not a minority yourself, obviously, you've always stuck up for, the little guy or people that are getting picked on, or, people of color and LGBT community, things like that. So, yeah, I obviously appreciate how supportive you've been and how much of an ally you've been to me. So,
I appreciate that.
mm,
You're like making me blush. Oh God. I want to talk to you about something that we disagree on as a
oh
couple.
boy, I'm ready.
You always say that when we
I'm
have
gonna
these
lose, by the way.
conversations,
Yeah.
that the system is broke or is working perfectly, and I like
Yeah.
to say that the system is broken.
Mm.
Oh wait, you're frozen.
No, I'm not.
Oh,
I'm
no,
here.
you're here. You're here. I think I have this optimistic view that the system is broken, kind of, because
Yeah.
I am white and I don't want to believe that it's so sorry but fucked up that we got to this point.
Yeah.
And it's always been fucked up. So can you just comment on the system working perfectly? Because then I want to talk to you about like what maybe the solution is.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, COVID, it kind of all started for me with like the COVID situation, like a few months
Mm-hmm.
ago, kind of having this realization. You know, when, and I did some bit of reading like after, but when like, you know, there are guys in Texas, things like the lieutenant governor of Texas and like people across the country were like willing to sacrifice themselves and like their grandparents for the economy, you know. Yeah, they're like, I'll die, you know, they're like, I'll die for the economy. I'll get coronavirus and die to save, you know, for capitalism, for the economy and stuff like that. And then kind of once they realized, you know, that it was mostly Black and Latino people getting sick from COVID, and who would be hurt most from reopening, because people that are hurt most are warehouse employees, food processing plant employees, healthcare workers, salon workers, people on the front lines, you know, who are more Black and brown than white. They had no problem reopening the economy and reopening, particularly in the South, in Texas and in Georgia. And, you know, not that it's any less or more true anywhere in the United States, but I think it's always been true that, like, you know, since day one, that the country was set up for, you know, white supremacist elite to use Black and brown people as economic fuel to control and exploit. I mean, they landed at Jamestown to plant tobacco and make money, and then within 12 years they had Black slaves, after they killed all the Native Americans there. So it's written in the Constitution, you know, that like life, liberty, and property and things like that. And I think that the only thing that's ever actually mattered is property and white property. And I think that's always been true. And yeah, it just kind of keeps popping up. And I think when people are like more outraged that like they burned down a Target or burned down a Wendy's or whatever, then, you know, Black people are murdered. You know, and Trump is willing to shoot looters and things like that, and people are saying this is so un-American, how could you do this and stuff like that. And I'm like, no, it's kind of how it's always been. It's kind of always been the case. Yeah, I mean, I think it's working exactly how, you know, the original founding fathers who owned slaves and, you know, picked George Washington because he would protect them, intended. So yeah, it's just, nothing's changed since then. It's just, you know, we can record things on our phones now, and
Yeah.
you know, we have Twitter, so and you know, slavery is illegal, which is cool. Shout out to Juneteenth and stuff like that, but they just figured out other ways to do it. So
Yeah, and that makes me really sad, because it just feels like, I mean, obviously, but there's been so many years since then, but there's also not really been that many years since then. But I just feel like I'd like to think that we've progressed past that point. But I think you're completely correct in the sense that there are just newfound ways to do the same thing. Oh boy, Echo has made an entrance.
Hi, Echo. Aww.
She will be joining us for the remainder of the conversation.
Aww.
Hi.
Yes, please.
But yeah, I, in my opinion, and we've talked about this a couple times. Hi.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that education might be the answer to
Yeah,
the problem. I
yeah,
think it starts in the schools, because if you have a kid whose parents are fully racist and they're teaching them racism at home, at least you can give them the choice in school to think a different way. And that's kind of why I also believe we're not going to see real impactful change until many, many years, until you and I are old and gray, which makes me sad. I wish it was different, but I think if we can start educating our children and the babies that might be coming up in the next 10 years and to be anti-racist, or give them the choice, I think we'll see change. But I guess, like, do you think defunding the police is the change? Like, because I just think of it differently.
yeah. I mean, I get what you're saying, like for sure. I think when you believe that like the system is just broken and can be fixed, I think that that's a valid belief for sure. Um, and I think education is really important to that. But I think it's defunding the police is just kind of the start. Um, and you know, just like when they abolished slavery or eliminated poll taxes or desegregated water fountains or buses or things like that, they just figured out other ways to oppress and kind of control and economically exploit. And they're going to continue to do so until, some massive changes happen. And I don't mean like reparations. I mean like, and not even just like eliminating the electoral college or anything like that. I mean, changing to a new economic system that's not, or changing the belief that people think that the economy is a zero-sum game where, I have to protect this money that I work so hard to earn, and I'm willing to kill people at any cost or to do that. So yeah, I think it's such a interconnected, like deep rooted issue that, these things will help obviously. But in order to like fix it, it's so much bigger than, just the police or just, a few bad apples or whatever. So
Yeah, I think that is where it gets overwhelming for everyone, because
yeah,
I, as a white ally, I want to help and I want to fix it. And obviously, the Black community just wants to fix it. But I think because you're right in the sense that the issue is so large, it feels unattainable. And I just want
it
to
does. Yeah.
know, like, from you, has this inspired you to take any action in your own spaces, in your own circles, and make any difference? Because for me, I think that's the only place left for me to go. And I kind of feel that way about all white allies at this moment. The only place left to go is to make change in your circles and in your spaces, and make that change intrinsically, and then bring that into your circle. Because I think you're right that one person, 5 people can't change the system, but we can change ourselves. But I mean, do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, no, I mean, for a while, kind of having that belief that like this is so much deeper, in the belief. I was reading this article on the Atlantic, and this guy was talking about I think it's called the racial contract, where there's this kind of understanding in the United States that like, white male lives are worth the most, and then like Black and Latino female lives are worth way, way less. And that impacts like their decision making, governmentally and politically and stuff like that. And that's something that's pretty hard to kind of erase entirely. But I don't think that means for me that it's not worth it to, make those changes. Like just because they transitioned from slavery to mass incarceration, things like that, just because they transitioned from, poll taxes to the voting machines are down or malfunctioning. Like, doesn't mean that it wasn't worth like fighting to eliminate poll taxes in the first place, right? Like, so even if it didn't ultimately like fix the problem entirely, it's still worth fighting for, because obviously the life that I have today is a lot better than the life that someone like me would have had 60 years ago. So yeah, it's still worth it. It's just there's a lot of work to do. Yeah, but I get what you're saying for sure.
Yeah. I totally had another thought, and then Echo started barking. I lost it.
It's all good.
But yeah, I just know that we are in an interesting space being an interracial couple, and I know you're in an interesting space with your own identity, and I'm very interested to see how we move forward. Just in general, not you and I, but in general.
Wow. You can't break up with me on Instagram Live, by the way. I'm pretty shitty. That's what you're trying to do.
Pretty shitty. I won't do that, people. Don't worry. I think what I'm saying is like I'm interested to see like especially white people act on this in the future, because I feel like I've just been seeing a lot of people doing the same thing. They're posting the resources. They're posting like, make sure you call your senator, make sure you write a letter to your Congress. And I'm like, okay, but are you doing that? Like, did you sit down this morning and do that? And I don't want to call out people or make people feel bad for posting resources, because I think that's important. But I also think that it's now on white people to change their behaviors intrinsically and in themselves. And I'm not going to make you comment on that if you don't want to as a non-white person, but that like I'm just critiquing my own race because I think we have a lot of work to do, especially the people who consider themselves allies.
Yeah, I mean it's tough for me to, maybe I'm sorry to be so cynical, but it's tough for me to see like, there's people talk about like how the country is so divided and how we're gonna ever like come together on these issues and things like that, and we need to unite and stuff like that. And it's kind of hard to believe that that's possible, when we've been arguing the dumbass all lives matter point for like 7 years now. Like the people that argue all lives matter or whatever, they know, like they've heard the, if your house is on fire thing, they've heard that, they know, they get it, they're just racist, and they understand. Or like the people that, that think COVID isn't that big a deal and refuse to like wear a mask. Like they know COVID's killing people. They just don't care about other people. They know it's probably smart to wear a mask. They just don't care. And so I feel like it's kind of tough where we live in like a society where people are so far like on either side of the spectrum, and like half of those people are just batshit crazy. Yeah. Because it's hard to have to come together on on Black Lives Matter and saying that like this cop should be arrested or whatever, because killing Black people is wrong, when like there's a large contingency of people in the United States that aren't willing to agree that killing Black people is wrong. So, which
is insane to me. Like it's just like, why
it's crazy
debate,
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like you can't, like the climate change thing, like we're trying to push forward on and change the environment and things like that, and you want to pass like carbon taxes or whatever, or transition towards electric cars or something like that, and you're trying to have an argument about it, and there's people that don't even believe that it's real. So it's kind of like that. Like how can you possibly engage in that kind of dialogue and come together if there's if you're trying to sit down at the table and there's people that don't even believe that a table is a real object or something like that. I don't know. You know what I mean?
No, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I feel.
all I can hope, honestly, it's like I said it with Liv last week, and I'm gonna say it again. Like, just to end my point. I mean, obviously, if you have other things to talk about, feel free. But just to end my spiel is like, please vote in November. I know you have your own opinions about voting, but for me, I feel like if you're going to make any difference, you have to vote, and especially vote this president out, because he's just perpetuating the system, and he's bringing out he's encouraging the bad guys to come out of the woodwork, and I think we need to put them back. So I just please vote and do what you can to get to the polls. I'm not telling you voted, but
I did.
I just think for anyone watching this, like, please use your right, because it is your right. And in this country, people of color have a lot of rights taken away from them, but you need to go vote, and especially white people, you need to go vote, and you need to vote for policies that get people that are discriminated against out, and that's my spiel.
Yeah, it's obviously super important, and particularly like in these small local elections for like your school board or like your judge or whatever. You know, I mean, here it's like it was tough for me on the ballot because it's, you know, everyone's pretty much an incumbent. And the one person that I felt pretty good about voting for, because she was a black woman running for judge, lost. Because she was running against the oldest, whitest man who's been a judge for like 40 years. Right? But it's still it's important, obviously. So yeah, vote if you can.
Yeah, please vote. I was gonna wrap it up. Do you have anything else you want to say before I just close? Oh wait, you're frozen.
Am I?
No, you're here. Yes. Before we close, obviously I just really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, I mean it's been cool to talk to you and kind of do this, and you know, it's for me, I've been kind of struggling because I'm not really someone that likes to go out and protest. It's not really my thing. I don't like walking, and I don't like being loud, and you know, I don't like potentially getting hit with tear gas and stuff like that. You know, I'm kind of a wuss. So I thought it was cool to just kind of be like on the sidelines and be like, I'll just donate money or whatever, and just kind of quietly support, which maybe that's fine, but you know, kind of understanding that you know, being both Black and Jewish, you know, what my ancestors kind of had to fight for and go through just for like me to exist. With slavery or escape the Holocaust or hello? Yeah. I mean, just to survive those things, survive much tougher situations than I am in currently. You know, it's kind of inspired me to be a little more courageous and, you know, take it a little bit more to the streets and, you know, be a little louder. So I think it's just important to keep being brave and keep being courageous and keep fighting for, you know, this movement. So, and I appreciate you continuing to do so as well.
Of course. And thank you everyone for watching. Thank you, Andrew, for being here. I love you.
Yeah. Love you too.
And I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and please leave any comments or questions below. Okay? Sound good? Bye.
Bye.